Jayo Radha Madhava. Thank you. Kunja Bihari.
Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Astatara Sata Sri Śrimad. His Divine Grace Abhaya Charavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Jaya Nitya Lila Bhavishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Astatara Sata Sri Śrimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki. Grantharaj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastavaduli Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Govardhan Pachai Nirvashesha Suri Vada Pasachi Story. We good?
Somehow got disconnected from the wall.
Really? There it is. Look at that. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, I Have Done My Part. July brought the rainy season to Vrindavan. Clouds began building from the beginning of the month, and by mid-July it would be raining daily. The perfumed odor of the kadamba flower was heavy in the air, and after a rain, the neem blossoms would give off their onion-like aroma. Anyone here ever chewed on neem? It's a very good antiviral, and it has certain prophylactic properties, and it makes your blood bitter so that the mosquitoes don't like you. But if you chew on a palm full of neem leaves, it has a very strong pungent resemblance to eating onion. For those of us who know what onions taste like, I know you've never had onions in your life, Arjunananda, so he doesn't know. So, you know. Madhva Brahman. The peacocks with their full feathered tails became ecstatic, dancing, cooing, and calling. Sometimes a sudden rainstorm would come even while Srila Prabhupada was sitting on his bed or at his dictating desk in an unsheltered part of the veranda. That's upstairs. And his servants would rush out to move him inside as quickly as possible. Sometimes when rain prevented his using the garden, he would recline instead on the little porch overlooking the garden. But at least the 120-degree heat was broken, and the days became more bearable. Prabhupada quietly rested and continued his day's routine, waiting to see what Krishna desired. He would often wake about 6 a.m. and open his eyes to see Tamal Krishna at his bedside. He would then extend his hand, indicated that he wanted to sit up in bed. Tamal Krishna or another servant would then lightly stroke Srila Prabhupada's back, while Srila Prabhupada spoke his mind. Very few devotees were visiting Vrindavan, and guests were rarely allowed to see Prabhupada. His health was not improving, nor did it seem to be at a crisis point as it had been in May. But because he was hardly eating anything, he was not building his strength. His main treatment consisted of hearing Kirtan, Śrimad Bhāgavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. One of the topics which Srila Prabhupada dealt with during these days was the conception of a model universe for a Vedic planetarium. His disciple Ambarish, great-grandson of Henry Ford, had pledged to donate for constructing a gorgeous museum planetarium in a major cities such as Detroit or Washington, D.C. Srila Prabhupada wanted to present the structure of the universe as it is presented in the 5th canto, but so far no one had been able to show how it could be done. The devotees who tried were often baffled in an attempt to reconcile the Śrimad Bhāgavatam's description with the conceptions of modern astronomy. In Bombay, they had brought a so-called Vedic astronomer before Prabhupada, but he had been unable to make even a simple diagram. Modern scientists give no credence to the Bhagavatam's account, describing the earth as Jambudvip, an island in the middle of concentric oceans and islands. Nor do the scientists find mountains as tall as those described in the Vedic literature. Srila Prabhupada cautioned the devotees, however, not to be guided by their own Western prejudices, but try and understand the universe as described in the Bhagavatam. And that was extremely difficult. Srila Prabhupada admitted, when I wrote this, I thought it will not be possible for me unless somebody helps me. How did you write it, Tamal Krishna asked. And Srila Prabhupada replied, Krishna helped me. I don't know. He laughed. That's somebody Krishna helped. Inevitably, the devotees asked, but how will we explain it to the scientists? We do not require to satisfy the scientists, Srila Prabhupada replied. We have to describe according to Shastra. If they can understand it, then they'll understand it. Otherwise, it is not our business to satisfy the so-called scientists. We are dealing with the real description. Tamal Krishna suggested that the planetarium would spell the downfall of Western civilization. Yes, said Prabhupada. I want to expose that they are cheating. Their only interest is to make money, and for this they cheat. If you can make this planetarium, it will be a grand success, triumphant. In early July, some of the devotees in Vrindavan were working on sketches of the universe according to the Śrimad Bhāgavatam. They were puzzled, however, about how to account for satellite photos of the earth, which seemed to contradict the Śrimad Bhāgavatam's description. Srila Prabhupada's reply was that the scientists were bound up by their own conditioning and could not go beyond a certain point. When Tamal Krishna reiterated that Śrimad Bhāgavatam's explanation still didn't agree with modern travel around the earth, Prabhupada insisted that it did. You are prejudiced, he said. You are conditioned with preconceptions of how everything is. It is just like a bull grinding, going around in a circle. He is tied up and simply going around. So everyone is tied up. They cannot go beyond a point, and they cannot move any way they like, just like the bull. They have cheated about going to the moon, so how can we believe them? They want to explain the whole universe, but how can we believe them? Once someone is shown to be a cheater, he will always cheat. A gentleman will say, I don't know, but they are not gentlemen. They are loafer class. How can we believe them? They said the world was flat. Then Galileo said it was round, and for this he was almost hanged. They didn't know, and he didn't know. But our knowledge doesn't change because it is perfect. As soon as there is change, it is not perfect. A few days later, the committee of devotees returned to Prabhupada and said that the question was still unanswered regarding how the Bhagavatam's description of Jambudvip could accommodate the fact of traveling west from Los Angeles and reaching India. In reply, Srila Prabhupada stressed that they not concern themselves now with such a minor issue, and he referred to the Pacific Ocean as a drop of water. The description in the Bhagavatam could not be adjusted within the limits of mundane knowledge. Prabhupada gave the example of how returning from Vaikuntha, Narada Muni had told a simple cobbler that Lord Narayan was passing an elephant through the eye of a needle. "Oh, Narayan is so great," the cobbler had said. But an educated Brahmana had said, "It is simply stories." And Narada had then asked the cobbler, "How can you believe that Narayan was passing an elephant through the eye of a needle?" "Why not?" the cobbler had said. "I am sitting under a banyan tree. There are so many fruits, and each fruit contains so many seeds, which will each grow into a big banyan tree." Srila Prabhupada said that with experimental logic, one cannot understand the inconceivable. Everything is inconceivable, he said, and these rascals want to bring it as conceivable. Don't be puffed up by your so-called education. It has no value. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 3rd Canto, 20th chapter, text 38 and 39. Chapter titled, Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura. So we'll chant and recite text 38, and then we'll read text 39. Prahasya bhava gambirang jigrantyatmanam atmana jigrantyatmanam atmana kantya sasaraja bhagavan gandharvapsarasam ganan gandharvapsarasam ganan. It's a little tongue twister, huh? Gandharvapsarasam ganan Prahasya bhavagambiram jigrantyatmanamatmana kantya sasaja bhagavan gandharvapsarasam ganan. Please chant. Prahasya bhavagambiram jigrantyatmanamatmana kantya sasaja bhagavan gandharvapsarasam ganan. 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 Very good, Bhakta Ryan. Ladies? Oh, wait. You'll have to wait now. I said ladies. Yes, Bhakta, go ahead. He'll chant, don't worry. Prahasya bhavagambiram Jigarantyatmanamatmana Kantya sasaja bhagavan Gandharvapsarasam gyanan bhakta fill Prasya bhava gambirang Jigarantyatmanamatmana Kantya sasaja bhagavan Gandharvapsarasam gyanan. Everyone did very well in that. So we're going to, I'll read the second. Vishasarja tanum itambai jotsanam kante mating priyam deva chadudu pritya vishvasu purogamaha. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma then evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself by itself, the hosts of Gandharvas and Apsara. Text 39. After that, Brahma gave up that shining and beloved form of moonlight. Vishvasu and other Gandharvas gladly took possession. Vishvavasu and the other Gandharvas gladly took possession of it. Please repeat. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma then evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself by itself, the host of Gandharvas and Apsaras. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The musicians in the upper planetary systems are called Gandharvas, and the dancing girls are called Apsaras. After being attacked by the demons and evolving in the form of a beautiful woman in the twilight, Brahma next created Gandharvas and Apsaras. Music and dancing employed in sense gratification are to be accepted as demoniac. But the same music and dancing, when employed in glorifying the Supreme Lord as kirtan, are transcendental, and they bring about a life completely fit for spiritual enjoyment. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gaur. Om Agana Timranda Syagaranjana Slakaya Chaksuram Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langai Tegaram Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarnam. So what to speak of understanding the configuration of the cosmos? It's difficult to chant Sanskrit. And yet people are expecting that they should have some evolved vision of how the structure in 4 dimensions exists, not just by our limited perception, of touch, sight, hearing. So everything in the material world is based on these 3 dimensions, length, breadth, width. And then time is the 4th dimension, of course, but there's other aspects as well. And then there's the fact that the living entity, the human specifically, is limited. His senses cannot perceive even what the dogs can perceive with regards to frequencies of hearing and varieties of smell. All right? Everyone's heard of a dog whistle, right? Have you heard of a dog whistle? Only dogs can hear it. You've heard of it. And so you can blow it and then you don't hear anything. But the dog immediately hears it. It doesn't matter. And it's obviously for them it's loud enough that they can hear at a great distance. So many limitations that humans have, but yet we want to, as Prabhupada said, bring everything within our compromised sense perception. So this is difficult. And in this verse as well, and trying to understand. And Prabhupada explains, of course, that casting off these bodies means casting off the subtle bodies. So it's not just that Brahma's evolving physical bodies, although he could, obviously. Pitama, he's the grandfather, the father of the cosmos, grandfather and father of every living entity, in one sense. And so many bodies emanated from him, some of which also, in previous passages, were described as, like I said, chasing him and pursuing him. So those bodies had a separate existence at some point. Just like when you're born, you have a separate existence from your mother, but at one time you were in the womb as one. You were non-different from her, essentially. You were composed completely from her DNA and the father's DNA, but for the most part, the mother gives the body. So in any case, we see that this, on so many levels, we can appreciate how how passion in this regard has to be for those who want to remain fixed. Brahma has a big job to do. We can't be, caught up with these various subtle, whatever you want to call them, alter egos that are coming up in the course of creation. Because he's the source of all the secondary creation. So everything that we know ultimately is emanating from him, emotionally, physically, subtly. So all these things are coming through him. And then, obviously, some things are not useful for him. Just like when we accept some task or project, we try to focus. We may be distracted by so many interfering thoughts. And those thoughts have to be set aside. You have to compartmentalize. And so this is a common thing. Otherwise, you go off on what they call a tangent. Right? It's not useful for your task at hand. It may have some other use at a future point. When you're working on something, so many future projects may spring up. But yet you have to focus on the one at hand and complete that. And then those other ones could be done, one after another. So this is basically Brahma's situation. Who can imagine what is going on in this situation? And it's not that these things are happening over the course of 1,000,000 years. We don't know the time frame here. One of Brahma's moments, 1/11th of a second, is 1 year of our time. 1 year, 1/11th of a second. So this, the scientists also cannot understand. They understand relativity to a very minor extent. They understand as you approach the speed of light, time begins to be warped in a way that they don't understand, but they believe it slows down. And therefore they have a conception to build a time machine, to go back in time. So they have that idea that time past continues to exist on a different level. Because energy that's their other aspect. And energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be changed. Right? So all energy, whatever energy exists, has always existed, will always exist, but in different forms. Right? But then there's spiritual energy. How does that act? Right? Spirit is eternal, it's the opposite. The opposite, the scientists understand matter and antimatter. They don't understand antimatter. They can only guess. But if matter is finite and temporary, then antimatter means infinite and eternal. So that's the nature of the spiritual world. So there's some seed of theoretical, however you want to call it, philosophical appreciation. But they cannot go beyond that because they don't have Śrimad Bhāgavatam. And so therefore Prabhupada kept stressing, it has to be according to the Bhāgavatam. This is direct perception, not from us, but from Lord Brahma, who is creating everything. And so why should we challenge this? We may not understand it. That's a different thing. I don't understand so many things. If you ask a common person, how does a car work? He cannot tell you. But yet he gets in the car, he drives it, he uses it for so many things. But he has no idea how it works. You know, I see internal combustion. It's a mystery. It's a total mystery. You could try to explain, but what's the point? You know, you have a fuel pump that circulates through either injectors or aspirated carburetor. And then there's valves, and then there's a camshaft, there's lifters, who can understand? You know? And then there's the combustion. And then the whole cycle repeats itself. It pushes down in the crankshaft. You know, but yet still they want to understand the nature of the cosmos. They cannot. You know? It's a different, you don't have the eyes to see, just like you don't have the ears to hear. You know, the subtle, even frequencies and color schemes in the physical universe. We cannot perceive, we cannot see infrared without the help of an instrument. Right? If you have an instrument to amplify infrared, then you can utilize it to some extent. Otherwise, it's invisible. It's a different spectrum. So the whole cosmic manifestation has multiple aspects that are visible to certain living entities and invisible to other living entities. We do not see the subtle, I cannot see your subtle body, I cannot see your mind, intelligence, and ego, but it exists. Bhumirapo no vayu kamano buddhevacha hankar iti yame. Right? And hardly anyone can see intelligence. So these things are there, but we cannot see them. You know? So we have to appreciate, if one is a little humble, this is the key. The scientists are always trying to impress themselves and others. But technically speaking, one should at least come to the point where I don't know. I don't know. And then from there, one can begin to accumulate the foundation of learning, a foundation of knowledge. Right? So this is, and then, of course, just like Prabhupada said in the Lilamrita, who helped you? Krishna helped me. Sarvasya chaham riddhisani vishtom mataksapatir jnanam apavanam cha. Krishna says he is seated in every living entity's heart. And from him comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So all this knowledge is already there. We've seen everything there is to see. You know, in 8,400,000 species of life. Even as at one point a Lord Brahma. Can you imagine, Bhakta Ryan? You were a Lord Brahma at one point. Every living entity starts off as Lord Brahma when he enters into the material world. You have to finish that Bhagavatam. And all these things are happening microcosmically, macrocosmically. We're not meant to meditate on it. But the fact is, just like I'm in this human form of life now, I've been in 8,400,000 species of life, of which 400,000 are human beings, and of which some of those are the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Kinnaras, all these denizens of the heavenly planets. Angels, where do we think angels come? So-called angels. Even the other philosophies, every Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, they all speak about these living entities. Right? They have their demons, they have their Satans, they have their heavenly personalities. Right? They're all there. But they don't know how they came about, how they categorize them. But in the Bhagavatam, everything is there. We see here's how the Gandharvas and the Apsaras are created. From the mode of passion. They're not the mode of goodness. Music is not, unless it's the holy name, Golokara Premadana Hari Nama Sankirtan, then it is not transcendental, it's not of any benefit. It doesn't impel you to anything of a higher nature. It keeps you on the platform of passion, or worse, ignorance. So much so-called music nowadays is totally in a mode of ignorance, only glorifying all sinful activities. So we have to be cautious in our analysis of our current situation and not identify with it, and to the extent that one becomes bewildered. Like, if one is associating with people who are scientists and constantly hearing from scientists from their conceptions, then one will become bewildered, just like if one is associating with a Mayavadi. Very easy to become bewildered. Everything is one. Right? They have that since time. Who was the Greek philosopher who came to that conclusion of everything as atoms? What was his name? I forget. Too long ago, Philosophy 101. But yeah, he understood everything is composed of atoms. On a molecular, on a level, everything is one. Because in the material world, everything has composed of atoms. Your body, everything. It's all there. But they don't understand consciousness. So that difference between spirit and matter, that is the higher education. So they've done everything they can on the lower levels of human capacity to try to understand the material world. But matter, always going, all matter, only matter. And nothing spirit. And spirit they relegate to religion, which they minimize for those who are so-called weak-minded, right? What is it? Religion is the opium of the people. Who said that? Marx. Religion is the opiate of the people. Why? Because they take shelter. There's even current philosophers say that. They cling to their Bibles. Who's so foolish as to make a pronunciation like that? Huh? At least someone is attempting to try to understand God. It may not be the full knowledge, but if you carefully read any scripture, you will find that certain aspects of the transcendence are prominently there if one can understand it. Right? But people are saying, they want to say, how could God create, the earth, the cosmos in 7 days? But whose 7 days are they talking about? They're only thinking about their 7 days. Tiny little, like the ant. The ant's life span, what is it? Maybe 1 year. But relatively speaking, that's equivalent to our 100 years. Right? Even the living entities take birth at night and die at night. For them, that's their 100 years. Everything is done. Birth, growth, maintenance, reproduction, dwindling, and vanishing. The 6 phases are all there in that 24 hours, or even 12 hours. The 6 symptoms. Everything is contained. But for us, it's 100 years. And for Lord Brahma, it's 311 trillion years. That's his lifespan. 311 trillion years. That's Brahma's 100 years. Right? So, yes, inconceivable. And people want to believe, because you can see there's a huge movement of people who are eagerly anticipating the arrival of the alien whatever. They don't know. They think that we've evolved from aliens. You ask 1 out of 10 people, they say, yeah, the aliens came, planted the seed. It was in the movies. It's in the science fiction books. They're looking there. UFOs are everywhere. You just have to have the eyes to see them. So they want to believe in this, that nothing could happen the way the scientists are describing. It had to be a higher intelligence. But for them, the higher intelligence is the aliens, not God. So it's unfortunate, which is why we're distributing these books, which is the sum total of knowledge, but we have to evolve to be able to understand. Krishna will help us. Don't worry about things which don't affect your spiritual trajectory. You want to stay on that path. You don't want to go off on a tangent, get distracted, take a detour, try to become, try to answer all the questions that need to be placed. There's not enough time in this human form of life. I mean, do we see Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, any of our acharyas worrying about, how the cosmic manifestation can be explained to the scientists? No. But if you can understand that you are spirit and not matter, then your eyes will be open to the eternal nature of the soul and his origins. And so therefore, Prabhupada stressed back to home, back to Godhead. Such a simple thing. Yeah, but at the same time, it is pregnant with knowledge. Just that one motto, back to home, back to Godhead. So if you know your origin, and that's the question that philosophers have sought to answer since time immemorial, who am I, what am I, and why am I? What is the purpose of life? So that is answered very clearly. And once you understand that, you'll find that everything is satisfied by that and the questions of the sages. Practically speaking, the first canto, first chapter, if one carefully studies, then he knows everything there is to know. But then the nectar comes by his continued pursuit to appreciate the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that is the source of our continued spiritual upliftment, or as it says here, evolution. And how is that spelled out in the Bhagavatam? Tada rajastamo bhavo kama lobhadayasche cheta etya anavidam stitpam satpam prasidhyate. That one is rising through these, he reaches the mode of goodness, he becomes open to this philosophical understanding that previously he could not attain through any means possible. Technically speaking, any one of our students has greater knowledge than the so-called PhDs, because they know the difference between spirit and matter. And this is the essential knowledge required to escape the cycle of birth and death, which is the problem. Birth, death, old age, and disease. Nobody has solved these problems. The scientists have been trying, but they want to distract you with, space travel. Is that going to stop birth, death, old age, and disease? No. And if they can't do it for real, they'll fake it. Right? A huge following about people who say, yeah, we never went to the moon. It was all done on some movie studio set. It's all there. Just depends on who you want to believe. Do you want to believe the scientists? Do you want to believe the, you can Photoshop anything. Everybody knows now. And as Prabhupada said, why believe cheaters? If they cheated in so many other ways, why believe them for that? Don't believe a cheater. They're proven cheaters. But we should place our faith in those pure devotees who are completely pure in heart. And therefore we are where we are now, thanks to them. And anyone who's honest will agree that he is in a much better position than he was previously. The knowledge you have now can never be taken from you, as long as you don't allow yourself to be covered by, again, some cheating propaganda, that, yes, what do they call it? Prabhupada said, it is not brainwashing, it is brain cleansing. It's brain cleansing. We're being brainwashed from the moment we're born with so many misconceptions and preconceptions, like Prabhupada said. You go to school, they tell you so many things. And 500 years ago, they told you the earth was flat. Now they tell you it's round. So, whatever. So Prabhupada says if it's changing, then it cannot be true. So they have no real knowledge. And it will evolve, and they'll come to some other understanding. Just wait and see. They'll eventually come, like they're starting to look into the nature of black holes. Because they know a black hole, there is nothing of any physical properties has any meaning with regards to that phenomena. It even, according to them, they don't know, can consume time. Everything is sucked into it, and they don't know where it goes. And they want to think, okay, maybe this is another portal, a wormhole, because they have these concepts, a wormhole, a shortcut between universes or galaxies or dimensions, right? You know, in the Brahma Samhita, which is not to be read by those who haven't at least understood the ABCs of Bhagavad Gita, Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, you won't get a complete understanding. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says right in the very beginning that the spiritual world and the material world are existing on the same plane. So they're coexisting. But we cannot see it. We cannot perceive it. So this right there, just like the Lord is in the heart. Where's Shweta Dweep? Shweta Dweep is the Vaikuntha within each universe. So within the universe, and we saw that who was that? Who was running there? We were just reading it. No, Vrikasura. Vrikasura was chasing Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, Vrikasura was a great demon. And he wanted a boon. And he was just about to cut off his head because he was cutting off his flesh and offering it into the Havan, into the fire. He heard that Lord Shiva can give this boon. He was cutting off strips of flesh, he's putting it in the fire. Lord Shiva wasn't coming, so he thought, no. So he's thinking, I need to cut off my head. So he went to take bath because you have to be wet. It's like when they sacrifice an animal, they have to bathe it first. It has to be wet when they sacrifice it. So he went to bath, he came back wet. He just put the knife to his throat, about to cut his head off and drop it into the fire. It's going to be a little tricky, but yet he was kind of like, pop, into the fire. But then Lord Shiva showed up and said, whoa, you don't have to do that. What do you want? He said, I want a boon. I want to be able to touch anyone and immediately kill him. Basically, he wanted to rid the earth at that time of every living entity so that he could have everything to himself to enjoy. That was the key. If I get rid of everybody else, and there's more whatever, more wine, women, gold, whatever, all for me. That was his intent. And so Lord Shiva was like, thinking, I promised this, I have to give it. It's like Lord Brahma with Hiranyakashipu. I promised that I have to give it. There's always these little pastimes like that. And so he gave this boon, but then the demon immediately wanted to try the boon out, and he wanted to touch Lord Shiva's head so that he could enjoy Parvati. Imagine that. He wanted to steal Lord Shiva's wife. So in this way, Lord Shiva had to run out of fear. And he ran everywhere, and finally he ran up to the Shweta Dweep. And when he went into Shweta Dweep, it's very interesting. It's a Vaikuntha Loka, but not everybody there has this Sarupya Mukti. It's not like that. There's all these sages and other living entities, and it's a place populated by those who have elevated themselves, but they're not in that. It's like a heavenly planet. So there's all these sages wandering around. So Krishna appeared before Vrikasura as a brahmachari, and with Rudraksha, so like a follower of Lord Shiva. With I don't know if he was wearing bark skin or a tiger, but he was dressed like that with his little iron rod and everything, young little brahmachari. And he asked Vrikasura, said, who are you? What are you? Why are you here? And like that. And so he disarmed him with his charming words. And because obviously Krishna, even here as Mohini Murti, he could charm anybody. So as a brahmachari, he also charmed. Young boy, innocent, just asking these simple questions. And he finally said, but, Lord Shiva is a very tricky fellow. How do you know that this boon is even going to work? If you touch his head and it doesn't work, he'll kill you. So maybe you should try it out on yourself. So in this way, he got the demon, foolish demon, to put his hand on his head and immediately blew up into 1,000,000 particles, pink mist. So, this is the nature of the situation. We cannot, it's very difficult to understand the complexities, the dimensions that exist simultaneously that we cannot see. So anyway, these wonderfully composed verses meant to stimulate the conversation amongst the devotees. How these are, what does it mean? And in this way, we can each continue to evolve our appreciation for that which we know and that which we don't know, that which is yet to come. So in this way, I like that part, with a laugh full of deep significance. Because Lord Brahma can understand on his own mental background why these things are happening. And he's almost like a spectator as he's casting these things off, this subtle, and they're evolving because he's creating these things. So here, what happens? Moonshine. So moonshine, lovely moonshine. It's very interesting. So text Patuna, tell him I'm giving class, and I'll call him in a minute. Any questions or comments? I'll read the verses again. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma, then evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself by itself, the hosts of Gandharvas and Apsaras. After that, Brahma gave up that shining and beloved form of moonlight. Vishvavasu and other Gandharvas gladly took possession of it. Because why? Because as it's described later, twilight is a time for enjoyment. The demons and people who are lusty, they look towards the dark, so they can enjoy that which is, you see, frowned upon in the daylight. Right? At nighttime, people are having sex everywhere, in their apartments and wherever. But in the daytime, if the same thing is happening, people will say, oh, this is not good. But at night, they ignore it. Because the night is the realm of the mode of ignorance. So things are relegated. And they accommodated within their psyche for some reason. Although it should not be. One should know wrong from right, whether it's daytime or nighttime, twilight, dawn, dusk. It doesn't matter. Has no time. So any questions? Bhakta Ryan? Formerly known as Lord Brahma?
Today's purport, the verse, I thought it's very appropriate for Narottam Das Thakur's appearance day. So I was wondering if you have any words to share in that regard.
Which verse?
The purport to the verse today.
With regard to Narottam Das Thakur?
It talks about kirtan.
Oh, talking about kirtan. The Gandharvas and the Apsaras.
The next one, glorifying the Lord.
We understand, and would be nice for Radhe Shyam to be giving this class, because then he could sing it for us. We have to have Arjuna Nanda do it. Because we can feel. One thing about, music in general is that it moves. What do they say? It moves the soul, but they don't know which soul that is. It's not really moving the soul. It's moving their passion. And for them, they associate or identify passion with their life. Because it's what stimulates them. Right? But when the acharyas compose these verses of transcendental significance, then the soul is actually moved. Real emotion is expressed and felt. When Prabhupada, why of all songs or tunes did Prabhupada begin every Bhagavatam class with Jai Dev Goswami's Jai Radha Madhava? It's a very intimate song. These songs are not spoken. These songs are not discussed much outside of very elevated circles, because they all allude to the eternal pastimes of Vrindavan that are going on between the divine couple and their eternal associates. But from these realized souls, we have an opportunity to get a glimpse. And of course, from our perspective, when we sing Jamuna Tira Vanachari, we visualize the Jamuna of our experience. Right? But yet, these paintings, the windows of the spiritual world, this is not the Jamuna, this is the Gokul and Goloka Jamuna, for which we have yet to visualize in this lifetime. But the great souls have seen these visions. All right? So to appreciate their ability to see spirit, because Prabhupada said, Krishna is there in Vrindavan even now. Right? And the Goswamis are running, where is Krishna? But we can only imitate. And that imitation is not recommended. That's a Sahaja mentality. But internally, we should appreciate, because that is how we evolve spiritually, that we imbibe these tunes on that level, that when will that day be mine? When I can appreciate and actually see, just like what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when he tastes the Charanamrita, his experience is that he's seeing the spiritual world. We have some experience of this. Those who have chanted for any length of time on the streets with sincere feeling can also conclude, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that there's nothing in the 14 worlds except the holy name. Everything else is just background. It's like you can have, to have a mundane analogy, you have a Zoom chat, and you can blur the background behind you, so you only see yourself. And there's some indistinct background behind you. So that, Lord Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he's chanting the holy name, everything fades into that. And so on Harinam sometimes, occasionally, you would hear devotees say that. Yes, Prabhu, I was chanting out there, and I wasn't on Fifth Avenue. I wasn't at 42nd Street or 34th Street or Union Square. I was completely absorbed in the holy name. And the holy name itself comprises every aspect of the supernormal spiritual world. Golokara Premadana Harinama Sankirtana. So when you connect with that, when you can feel that, you can appreciate the reality of that. apart from your experience of mundane reality. So you know it's there. It's like a vision. You know, there's whole cults built up around the vision of the Virgin Mary or the vision of this person or that person. But the saintly persons, their visions are much more in depth. And we're reading some of them every day. This is why it's called realized knowledge. It's not mundane. It's totally transcendental. But we're not transcendental. So there's a lag between our ability to read and our ability to understand. All right? Narottam Das Thakur ki.
I wanted to ask a quick clarifying question about music. Being in the mode of only the mode of passion, you said. The music is only the mode of passion. I mean, can instruments be offered? Maybe not necessarily with singing, but can they be offered like in Krishna consciousness? Can that be an acceptable offering?
You offer in a mode of passion? Say that one more time.
Can instruments be offered, like playing of instruments? Can that
Yes, yeah, it can be, but they have to be.
like Shavasana?
The instruments we play are for the pleasure of the Lord,
Right.
not for the pleasure of the audience. So Prabhupada was very strict about that. Madangam, kartal, like that. Occasionally harmonium in settings of certain types of settings. You know, but if it serves its purpose to attract people to chant, like that. Because there was a time when we were doing full-on rock shows. You know, my godbrother Vishnu John Maharaj used to call it the Transcendental Road Show. They would go from place to place and set up, because many devotees were musicians like yourself. Very qualified, very expert. But Prabhupada said this is not what we want to do. We don't want to attract those who are simply attracted by this. Because if someone is attracted by the holy name, not the instrumentation, then there's some potential, you know, because if a person, you know, so many people came who were able to, I used to gather when a person would join the temple. We were bhakta leaders. We used to break all their attachments. How did we do it? We didn't break the guitars or break the drum sets. We used to gather everything together, take it in the van, and go to the flea market and sell everything. Because that person makes advancement from his breaking his attachment, and from whatever value is there goes to the benefit of the temple. So it's a win-win. And also, sometimes a person thinks, oh, now my career is finished. I lost my Fender Stratocaster, my Marshall, da-da-da-da-da, you know, whatever it was. And so I have nothing to go back to. We all have so many attachments that need to be broken. Because then once one can contemplate, why should I go back to that? What did it give me of any real benefit besides some self-pleasure? You know, why do people like to make music? Because they think, I made this. I'm the creator. This is just another reflection of the God complex. I did this. You know, I composed this. I'm so great. Ishwaraham aham bhogi siddhaham balavan sukhi. But if you compose for Krishna with genuine sentiment, but it has to be on that realized platform.
Right. So should we be careful with kirtan specifically, not to use other like tunes that weren't composed by them?
You follow the senior devotees, what they say. Just like Sri Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj, he was a very expert musician. And all the kirtans, he used to play his, I don't know if it was a trumpet or a cornet. Because the trumpet and the cornet look very similar, just different tunes. So he would play his trumpet all the time. You can go see the YouTube videos like that. But at the time of, wanting or desiring to evolve spiritually into the sannyas ashram, he was told, well, yes, you can be on it, but no more trumpet. So then he went to the tempura or the vina. And ultimately, even that's not necessary. You know? Because it is by your words alone. Words are if a person is looking towards appreciating a song, he wants to know what the meaning is. He may be moved by the rhythm or the melody or the beat. And that in itself will agitate someone's passion, there's no doubt. We see it all the time. They have techno rock or whatever that is now, electro something or other. Right? Dr. Phil, you know all these things. I don't know any of these things. I see the kids. It's just simply lights and meaningless music and drugs. A rave, yeah, what do they call it? Raves, yeah, that's the word. You know, but it's ultimately meaningless. And if a person who like, if you're mature in your understanding, even a little bit, you look at this, you realize this is complete nonsense. These people are simply, they're intoxicated to the point where they've adopted an illusion as reality. And they're living it for a short amount of time. It's a fantasy, an hallucination. But for them, it's like their dream. It's like a person who doesn't want to wake up because he's so engrossed in his dreams that he prefers sleep over waking consciousness. So don't be that sleepwalker. You know, concentrate on everything you can to find your clean self, your pure self, because automatically everything will come out. Whatever talents that you have will manifest in ability, composition, articulation, appreciation. Everything is there. It just has to evolve itself along spiritual lines. The closer you approach the mode of goodness, that's the verse I was quoting, Tata Rajas Tamo Bhavo. That's there in that second chapter I was telling you, if you get a chance, read. You know, right? Divinity and divine service. And you can read them together with the Gita. So read it. So, in any case, please try to evolve yourself and cast off all these shining, superficial bodies, my ego concept of myself. I'm so handsome, I'm so beautiful, I'm this, I'm that. Right? This is all ahankara, all false ego. The body is just a bag of stool, blood, urine, and disgusting things. If you've never done an autopsy or seen one, then you have no conception of how disgusting this human body is. As soon as the actual spirit soul is gone, it's literally a bag of stool. Nothing. And when it decomposes, the worst smell in the world. You know, law enforcement circle, it's called decomp. No one wants to be the first one to go into a suspected crime scene where the body's been ripening for a few days. You know? Most horrible smell. But what happened just a few days ago was, it was your most beloved girlfriend or wife or daughter, and you know, it was the aroma, the smell used to drive you nuts, you know, of her perfumed hair or his aftershave or whatever you want to call it, you know. There. But now it's just a disgusting maggots crawling out of the eyes and of every orifice. You have to see it to believe it. I've seen enough in my former profession. So, in any case, and maybe everybody should get a look at these things so that they really appreciate how clearly the Bhagavatam is saving us by giving us this transcendental knowledge. How you're not this body. You have Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, all these things. We're not these bodies. and we're not these minds. Okay. One gentleman has a question, but you have to speak a little loud.
The kind question is, when the soul leaves the body, so all the material elements are air only. Does the mind, false ego, and intelligence also, the soul carries on with the soul?
The subtle mind, intelligence, and false ego carry over into the next material body if one has not completed his perfection of human life, which is to understand the destination. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tyaktva deham punarjanma nayati mamiti sarjana. One who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and disappearance, for him he never takes birth again. So, if you are bound to take another birth, depending on how you've lived your life and how your senses have become developed, if you've developed the senses of a human being, you'll get a human body. If you've developed the senses of a dog, you get the body of a dog. That mind, intelligence, and ego that you developed here, if it wasn't along the lines of humanity, then it will go to wherever is the suitable carrier for that. It evolves to that. But if you think of Krishna at the time of death, yam yam bhapi smaram bhavam, at the time, then you will go to him. Your ego, mind, intelligence, ego are purified. They become totally, that you recover your spiritual identity. You have a spiritual ego, as a servant of God. You have a spiritual mind. All these things are there. But now they're covered over by these modes of material nature. Goodness, passion, and so my mind and intelligence, the subtle elements will remain here, trapped, until you break that cycle, that samsara, with transcendental knowledge. Have you read Bhagavad Gita? Have you read Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada? Because that one gives the details. Others are very superficial. But by the pure devotees' expansion of purports without any adulteration, the essence is retained, but the explanation is expanded. And you'll get much more benefit by reading that Bhagavad Gita as it is. And you can see Gopal Champabu after class. He'll be happy to present to you the various options from the student version up to the deluxe version. And what is your good name? Pleasure for you to come to the temple. Hare Krishna. Oh. He's also from Dubai. Grantharaj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Radha Govinda ki, Sri Gaur Nitai ki, Giriraj Maharaj ki. Jai.